This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports. You're listening to TGI Sports Talk with your host Keith Angle on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good evening, everybody. Keith Angle for TGI Sports Talks, college, football, Huddle. How's everybody tonight? We had week 0 last week and some real football, and we got week 1 with some huge matchups this week that we'll talk about tonight. I want to welcome everybody who's with us tonight on Facebook, who's on YouTube, who's, where else? Twitter. We'll be on Roku tomorrow at 11:30 with this show. And we'll also replay it Friday. And over the weekend, you can, on Roku, excuse me. And you'll also be able to catch it live on, broadcast, recorded live, if you will. Been a rough day, guys. I started by spilling my coffee all over myself on the Started Up show this morning. So go back and watch that on the Northeast Streaming Sports channel if you want, because it's a laugh out loud riot. Seeing Keith kind of scrambling with coffee all over him and then remember to take himself out of the room. Anyway, welcome to the Facebook viewers. As I said, you'll see us on Roku the next couple mornings. I'll replay this show on my Facebook pages, TGI Sports Talk, my personal page, Northeast Streaming Sports, over the weekend. So anybody who doesn't catch it tonight can catch it then. We'll have, we're going to talk about a lot of stuff tonight, and I'll get to my spotlight group in a second. One that I'm really excited to talk about. Also, tonight we're going to talk about last week's Week 0 games. Not a lot of big games, but some interesting games. Scott Frost puts himself even more squarely in the hot seat. The only question for me and Scott Frost right now is, does he make it through the season before he gets fired? We'll also talk about this week's games, lots of big ones. Notre Dame, Ohio State, probably the top one among them. But you got Oregon and Georgia. You've got Utah and Florida, plus a bunch of others. You got Brian Kelly's debut at LSU against Florida State. I find that to be an interesting game. We'll talk about the Michigan quarterback situation. We'll talk about, as I said, Brian Kelly. We'll talk about Scott Frost. We'll talk about some other things around the world of college football as well. And we'll have Mr. Mark Mancini from Mancini Media on with us about 8 o'clock at the top of the hour or so. And we'll see what his thoughts are. We'll do our I'm going to do picks for this weekend's at least top 25 games and some others. We'll talk about any games that you guys want to talk about, any topics that you guys want to talk about. And we'll do Mark and I do our locks, dead solid locks, and don't be surprised if we'll do it later in the show. So we'll do all of that and more. So I hope you guys have had a good weekend. I hope you're ready for the Labor Day weekend. Again, it's we're moving into my favorite time of the year, the fall. Hope to play some golf. Hope to do some other things. So let me jump in before we get started here. I want to do our weekly shout out, our this week's group shout out, I should say, is to the College Football Discussion and Recruiting page. This is one that I joined last year, and they were very supportive. They do have a great college football pick'em that I get in. I've got to get in it. I just was checking with one of the admins today to make sure they still have it. I didn't do all that well last year, but I certainly hope to do better this year, and I had a lot of fun doing it. But this group, I have to tell you guys, I just lost. Let me pull it back up. They've got a ton of members. 13.5 thousand, that is 13,000 members here in this group, all talking college football. They're kind enough to let me share my show. We get some good feedback from there. We get some good views from there. And I'm always excited to post the show there. And I want to thank the group admins, Jennifer, Christine, Jean Pale, who's a moderator, Kayla Anderson, who's a moderator there. And again, they've got a bunch of really good college football fans there, and they talk a lot of good college football, and then they have a lot of good posts there. So if you want to follow college football, this is a good spot for you to do just that. So feel free to jump in there. The college football discussion and recruiting page, one of my favorites, 13,000 plus members and going strong. So congrats to them. Thanks for supporting TGI Sports Talks, College Football Huddle, and also the other shows that have college football content that you do allow me to share to the page. Often on the Sunday Stream of Consciousness, we have a football segment. Sometimes on Friday on the Are You Serious show, we have a college segment as well, and some vlogs that I do and whatnot. So you guys know the drill. Check them out. Join them. It's a great group to belong to. What else tonight did I want to get out of my chest here before we get started? I had something on my mind just now. Oh, I do want to make a quick announcement, too, and remind everybody, too, that the Sunday Stream of Consciousness show will be moving this weekend. On Sunday, we'll be at our noon time, 8:30 a.m. Eastern time, and we'll go to 10:30. And we'll be covering everything in the world of sports. And it's literally a stream of consciousness, guys. I try to do it in segments for all the sports, but it ends up being a mishmash, and we jump around, and the audience drives that show just like it does here. And I can't thank you guys enough for your participation and your support for all of TGI Sports Talk's endeavors. And there's some other new ones on the line, too, I'll tell you about as we go forward. But tonight, it's college football. And we're going to start with, let's just start with the week 0 results and some of the storylines from those games last week. Again, not a lot of huge matchups. I'll go through these scores fairly quickly. We'll concentrate on a couple, at least one. And I'm going to leave that game to last. I'm going to go through some scores. Western Kentucky. And now I'm going to try to remember who I picked it. So I'll tell you if I was wrong. Western Kentucky beats Austin Peay 38-27, excuse me. Reed, the quarterback for Western Kentucky, goes for 279 and 4 touchdowns. So a nice start for Western Kentucky to their season. I'll leave that game till last. UNLV, who I did like last week to win fairly big at home, did so 52-21 over Idaho State. UConn, who I thought would get trashed against Utah State. I think Utah State's got a decent football team. I believe they're traveling to Alabama this week. I got to look at the schedule as we go through it. But UConn gave them a game, at least into the fourth quarter. Ended up losing 31-21 in Jim Mora's debut at UConn. And maybe Jim Mora can bring a little energy and a spark to this UConn program. Listen, this was a good football team. I keep saying not that long ago, guys. 2011, 2012, they were in a Fiesta Bowl before the Big East had to fold. Again, I'm not going to go down this road right now, but when realignment started then, the Big East was one of the first big victims. And there'll be more as we go through this. Illinois trounces Wyoming as I had expected, 38-6. Brown, the running back we talked about last week for Illinois, goes for 151 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground. So congratulations to him. Florida State, as they should, rolls over Duquesne 47-7. This is a good start for Florida State. They got a tough game at LSU. And Brian Kelly's debut coming up this week. So Florida State needed this week to really, really roll. And they did so in Mike Norvell's first game. Mike Norvell is on He's on the watch, guys, just like Scott Frost is, who we'll talk about in just a second. Florida Atlantic. Oh, there's Mr. Dingling I hear going by outside. It's an interesting time to come by. Oh, God. Florida Atlantic rolls over Charlotte 43-13. We were on Florida Atlantic. North Carolina 56-24. Not terribly impressive on the defensive side of the football. I watch a little bit of this. Florida A&M should not be scoring 24 points off of an NCAA FBS division school in my mind. So North Carolina's defense still has some work to do to prove some things in my mind. Nevada goes into New Mexico State. Nevada's always got a decent program. I went with New Mexico State at home in this game. Ended up a loser, 23-12. Nevada was the winner. Tua goes for 109 yards on the ground for Nevada. UTEP I liked a lot. UTEP was a program I thought was on the rise. UTEP going to Oklahoma this week for Oklahoma's home opener. Alan Perales, one of our devoted followers, will be at that game, I believe. We'll see if we hear from Alan tonight or if he's working. But North Texas goes into UTEP and beats them up pretty good, 31-13 on the road. Not a good start for UTEP, who's expecting to do better. And Vanderbilt, this is my big loser of the day. Hawaii getting 11 points at home, I thought was a great pick. And I thought they might even win the game. Vanderbilt, with all the distractions are going to Hawaii, Vanderbilt goes out there and wins 63-10. Wright, the quarterback for Vanderbilt, throws for 163 yards and 2 touchdowns. Hawaii just gets pounded at home. Not a good start for Hawaii. Not a good sign for them. Maybe a sign of life for Vanderbilt. We'll see. And then the last game I want to talk about tonight from last week, Nebraska and Northwestern in Dublin. This was one of my picks last week. I said, not only did I like Northwestern to cover the spread, I thought they'd win the game outright, and they did, 31-28. Thanks in no small part to hello, Mickey Delaney. We get your little hello up. Good to have you with us tonight, Mickey, out in the state of Washington. His teams will, I think, get started this weekend. We'll see when we get to the schedule. But in this game, up 28-17 with, I think, 11 minutes and change left in the game. After just scoring a touchdown, Scott Frost thought it was a brilliant time to have an onside kick attempt. Failed miserably. Northwestern gets the ball near midfield, and soon thereafter scored a touchdown that cut the lead to 4 points. And they soon got the ball back and scored the go-ahead touchdown with just a couple minutes left in the game. So Scott Frost finds a way to give away another game. Listen, Nebraska, I kept hearing last year, they're close, They just need to learn how to win. I said it a few times. I've made my decision. This team is not going to win as long as Scott Frost is the head coach. It's not going to happen, guys. It's just not going to happen. I think the only question now is going to be, does Scott Frost make it through the season? And we'll talk more about that later, maybe with Mark Mancini. But this is one of my questions for the day, and I certainly want your guys' opinion either now or later on. Scott Frost is the only question if he even lasts the season at Nebraska. This guy's had a chance to build something here at his alma mater. You know, we talk about the coach's hot seat. I've got my little thermometer of the temperature of different hot seats, and Scott Frost is at the top. The number one hot seat in the country now. There's some others that are close to him, but nobody's under more pressure than Scott Frost. This team won 1 game in the Big Ten last year. I think 3 games overall. Yeah, they were in a bunch of games. So what? The idea is to win games. And Scott Frost now puts himself squarely in the bullseye. So it's going to be very, 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 very tough for this Nebraska team, I think, to rebound from this long flight home from Dublin. They get a bit of a breather this week. As who do they end up with this week? Hold on a second. I wanted to find Nebraska. Can I find them quickly? Probably not here. Conference here. Let's see. Big Ten. Where's Nebraska this week? Nebraska will have at home North Dakota. This better be a blowout. Listen, one of the things to keep in mind, too, and thinking about Scott Frost, he's got a $15 million buyout. That drops to $7.5 million come October 1st. So something good better happen between now and October 1st, or I could see potentially Scott Frost being fired on October 2nd. Just saying. We'll talk more about that as the season progresses, as it were. So not good to be Scott Frost right now, I'm going to say. Oh, gosh, what a tough time for them. What else is going around the world of college football? Let's take a quick look around some of the top stories. We got a comment here. Let me get to. Listen, I switched up my mice, as it were, and I keep grabbing the wrong one here. There's Augustin. How are you, my friend? Good to have you with us tonight. He's out on the West Coast. I think he's an Oregon fan. We're still trying to determine that for sure. I always get a question mark. Hopefully, Augustin, you have a team that you are solidly behind. A couple things before we talk about news, or some of the games from this week. Let's look at some stories around college football. We've talked about. Yes, I am due. I'm going to say he's an Oregon fan. All right. That's what we like to hear, my friend. And let's go around the league a little bit here. Let's swing around the league a little bit. Get some news and notes. Let's go to this one. Some news and notes around the league. Fox and ESPN have opened, they're going to open negotiations with the Big 12 about potentially redoing their TV contract early. They're going to enter into discussions with their multimedia partners to explore an accelerated extension of its current agreements. Sources had previously told ESPN that the two networks had agreed to talks. This could, and Brett Yomark also said the Big 12 has enjoyed a fantastic relationship with its multimedia right holders, and he looks forward to having these conversations. It's an exciting time for college athletics, given the changing landscape. We welcome the opportunity to engage our partners to determine if an early extension is in the best interest of both parties. This is an interesting time to openings. I've said from the beginning, when Oklahoma and Texas announced they were going to the SEC for the 2025 season, that was more likely, in my mind, to happen for the 2023 season. And we'll see how that plays out. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it will play out or not. I mean, obviously they're going to have a 16-team league, I think, next year. My math. They've got 10 teams. They're going to add 14. I'm sorry, they're going to have a 14-team league the next two seasons if they do not leave early, as Cincinnati, BYU, Houston, and UCF are going to be joining the Big 12 next year. And by the way, I think that brings some value to this TV contract, by the way. So we'll see what happens there. I think it'll be very interesting. I do think Oklahoma and Texas will be in the SEC come next fall. Just my opinion at the moment. That could change. Situations are fluid when it comes to college football, guys. We know that all too well. What other stories do we have? Florida A&M responds to a letter by football players demanding financial compliance support in the wake of eligibility issues. They had considered not traveling to the season opener last week for North Carolina as a team, openly questioning the level of financial compliance support the players are receiving from the university. Nearly 90 players penned a blistering letter to school president Larry Robinson on Sunday, the day after the team lost, as I said earlier, 56-24 to the Tar Heels, while playing without 26 ineligible players. Florida A&M was paid $450,000 to make this trip. Again, these players think, this is the way of the world now in college sports. Is, these players think they're due better support, financial shares. It's a very, very interesting situation. This situation is going to bear watching as well. They do play Jackson State this Sunday in the Orange Blossom Classic in Miami. So we'll see how that goes. That game will be on ESPN2. The ACC commissioner, Jim Phillips, told ESPN on Wednesday that he feels really, really good about the trajectory of the league. I'm not sure how Jim Phillips can feel that way. He's got a TV contract that is antiquated. He's got a league that's ready to implode because when the next wave of realignment comes, and mark my words, it's coming, this league will be in trouble. As they stand to lose Clemson, they stand to lose Miami, they stand to lose North Carolina, they stand to lose Virginia, they stand to lose at least 6 teams in my mind to the Big Ten and the SEC, and then the rest would have to splinter most likely. Then it becomes a matter of survival for the Pac-12, the Big 12, the ACC to see who can be the smaller third wheel behind the Big Ten and the SEC. I think only one of those leagues will survive. And I think it'll be the Big 12. I think the Big 12 will pick off some of the remnants of the of the ACC. I do think the AAC, the American Athletic Conference, will pick up some of those teams on the lower rungs of the ACC. We're headed for another round of realignment before, say, 2025. Before the next playoff situation process comes into place, a new TV contract for the playoff, probably more teams in the playoff. This is going to be a very interesting couple of years, and the realignment is a very real possibility as we go forward. What do we got here? Yes, 3 days for college football. Come with September 3rd. Actually, it'll start on the 2nd. It'll actually start tomorrow on the 1st. There are games tomorrow, which we'll get to in just a little bit. Augustine. Boy, Keith, get your head out of your butt, would you? It's been a long day, guys. I said at the top of the show, if you're watching, and please go watch the started up show from this morning on Northeast Streaming Sports. About 10 minutes into the show, as we're doing the Major League Baseball scoreboard, I just dropped an entire cup of coffee all over my soundboard, all over my keyboard. It was a mess. It's a funny if you want to watch somebody just explode on live streaming. So that was fun. The NCAA says they're going to speed up the infraction process and implement transfer windows. So they're trying to control the transfer process, which, by the way, I mean, if I see one more story about a quarterback who's playing with his 3rd team in 4 years, and the transfer portal has really made it so that you're a free agent pretty much every year of your college career. You can just up and leave. If you feel you're not getting a good enough NIL contract or deal from the school you're at, you can hold them hostage to go to the boosters and get you a better deal, or I'm going to go to University XYZ. Oh, what's Augustine got here? I'm watching college football and NFL and baseball and sometimes NHL and basketball. All at once, that's a lot of TVs you need there, Augustine. I'll get your name right, I promise. So we'll see what happens here. Look at, the NCAA's also asked the schools for help in policing transfers and policing NIL deals. And you know what? You can't ask the inmates to make sure that their fellow inmates stay in the unlocked cells. My gosh. So we were talking about Jackson State earlier. Jackson State coach Deion Sanders on Tuesday said on Instagram, in an Instagram video, that his program players are now in crisis mode when it comes to grappling with multiple water problems that afflicted Mississippi's capital city the past week. They're without running water at the University of Jackson State. They're having trouble, keeping players hydrated. They're having players getting players clean after practices. So, it's not a usual thing we talk about, but water is important to these players, especially in the deep South at this time of year. It is hot, and there's some problems at Jackson State. But they're going to play this weekend against Florida A&M and Miami, and hopefully, they've got some help from the governor. Tate Reeves has declared a state of emergency for Jackson's water system. Jackson, Mississippi, again, the capital of the state. And you think that they could probably get this water situation situated. You would think in this day and age, lack of water would not be one of the issues these major universities are grappling with. So kind of interesting. Anyway, what else is going on? And not a good story. San Diego State defends its handling of the gang rape allegations against former punter Matt Araiza, who was cut by the Buffalo Bills this past weekend. Him and the two of his then teammates were accused now of gang raping a 17-year-old girl last year. And athletic director John David Wicker and football coach Brady Hoke emphasized the university's position that its response followed guidance from local police. Well, I saw this girl interviewed, and there was a lot of talk on the internet and other places that this girl didn't speak up before Matt Araiza was an NFL punter and making some decent bucks. He's a punter, but I'm sure he's making some decent bucks as a drafted NFL player. But this isn't the case. She was on and said she reported this the next day to the university and to the local police. This is not going to end well for the university. This is not going to end well for the local police department. And this is not going to end well for these kids that were involved in this story. The details are they're not something we're going to get into here. But it was pretty, they're pretty ugly. Elsewhere, I was going to get into this when I get with Mark Mancini. I think I will. I think we'll wait for the Michigan quarterback situation until Mark Mancini gets in with us. I want to get into some of the week 1 games this week and make a few predictions and see what we can do here to help you guys out. What are the week 1 must-see games? What are they? And I want to go through. We're going to go through the top 25 right now, and we'll make some more picks later on with Mark Mancini. But I want to go through. First, we'll go through the top 25 games. We'll use the. Let's see what we got here. I'm going to start with the AP poll. These are games involving number 21 through 25. You got BYU visiting South Florida at 4 p.m. on Saturday. They played last season at Provo and down 28-6 at halftime. The South Florida Bulls outscored BYU 21-7 in the second half, but never got the ball back after a touchdown with 5:41 left. So BYU squeaked one out. BYU was 10-3 for the season last year, while UCF was 2-10. UCF has been in the toilet for a while. They kind of gotten it going for a while under Jim Leavitt, and another team that probably suffered with the loss of the Big East 10 years ago. But Jeff Scott's in his third season. I think he's the coach on the second hottest seat in the country, and a win here would be good. But I don't see UCF winning this game at home. I think BYU wins this game 38-24. We'll see. but I don't see much going for UCF in this game. They do have former Baylor quarterback Jerry Bohannon as their starter. He started 12 games for the Bears last year, helping them reach the Big 12 title game before he transferred. And they did win the Sugar Bowl, but he did miss the regular season finale and the conference championship game with a hamstring injury. So I see BYU winning this game fairly handily. Will they cover the spread? Most likely. I think the spread is 12 or so, and I do think they'll cover this game. Yeah, it's not really football related, Augustine, because I'm not going to put it up there. So we're going to try to Guys, I apologize. I got booted. I ended up starting up the wrong show. Oh, my God. I probably booted somebody off of. I'm very sorry if I booted somebody off of. Probably getting texts all over the place right now. I apologize, guys. We're having technical difficulties right and left. I started doing these games, and I'll have to go back and start again. We started with the AP 25 through 21. I picked BYU to beat up UCF. I'm going to go through these a little quicker because I've now wasted 6 minutes of our time here, so I apologize to everybody. Oh, God. I did pick Texas San Antonio to upset Houston, number 24 Houston at home. That's an upset because I do believe Houston will be favored in this game, and I would take the over, whatever it's going to be, because I think this game will be in the mid-80s. Boy, it's been a rough day. Oh God, I hope I close that show out. Hang on one second, guys, while I do something. After this, we're going to go to VMI at Wake Forest. Wake Forest is without starting quarterback Sam Hartman, as we just discussed, and yeah, it's going to be tough for Wake Forest probably to repeat last year's double-digit victories, the first time in school history, I believe, maybe the second time in school history. But without Hartman, it's going to be a little bit rougher. They're going to have, I think, redshirt freshman Mitch Griffiths will be the quarterback here, replacing Sam Hartman until he comes back. He's out with a non-related football injury. So we'll see what happens here. I do think they'll have more than enough to hold off VMI, and I'll pick them in an easy victory, a couple, probably 3 or 4 touchdowns. One thing to keep an eye on here, we talked about Justice Ellison taking over for Kristen Beal-Smith. Kristen Beal-Smith transferred to South Carolina. That is a situation to keep your eyes on because the last time we had a transfer from Wake Forest to another school, major Power 5 school was Kenneth Smith III last year going to Michigan State from Wake Forest. Had a tremendous year for state and ended up a number 1 draft pick in the NFL draft in Seattle. So, yeah, I'm back, Mickey. We're having we got some gremlins in the works here tonight. I apologize to everybody on this show. I apologize if I might have booted somebody off of Roku by accident. I'm waiting to get a nasty text here. But in any event, I'm back. Troy at Ole Miss. I'm still trying to figure out some new stuff here. Troy at Ole Miss, I think, listen, a lot of really good players starting with Matt Corral to replace at Ole Miss for Lane Kiffin. Whether they'll be able to repeat their best season maybe in school history, best record in school history for sure, and a New Year's Day Bowl. Whether they'll be able to repeat that, not sure. But this should not be a place they have a lot of problems. I think they'll beat Troy handily. 48-10, let's say. And I think this will be an interesting barometer for some of the new people that are coming in to replace Matt Corral and company at Ole Miss. So we'll see what can happen there. Number 20, Miami of Ohio visits Kentucky, number 20. I like Kentucky a lot in the Southeast. Possibly even an upset winner in their division, depending on how Georgia comes back from all their key losses. Keep an eye out for Kentucky this year. Really well coached under Mark Stoops. He's having a little spat with John Calipari right now, but we'll see how it goes for Coach Stoops this year. I think this team, they run the ball well. They've got Will Levis coming back, a seasoned quarterback, and this, leadership and experience at the quarterback level at this level of college football is so important, and I do think Will Levis brings that to Kentucky. So it's going to be a matter of how well this team can move the football when they need to throw it. They run the ball very well. They play pretty good defense under Mark Stoops, and this could be a surprise. It's not going to be a big surprise. They were a really good football team last year. Could be an outsider to potentially get to the SEC championship game should Georgia slip far enough. Probably not going to happen, but something to keep your eye on. Cincinnati visits number 23. Cincinnati visits number 19 Arkansas in a really good interconference game, I think, to start week one. The Bearcats, they kind of need to see. They've got a lot of holes to fill with Desmond Ridder, Sauce Gardner, and some others heading to the NFL. The biggest question is going to be if Luke Fickell's been able to be able to keep them relevant nationally and fill those holes and retool on the fly, as so many really good teams do when they lose talent the way that Cincinnati did this last season. After a dream season last year, getting in the first group of 5 team to get into the playoff. I think they'll get off to a tough start here. This is a good Razorback team. And I think KJ Jefferson and the Razorbacks are gonna be able to put this game away. Probably be close, but I think they'll pull away near the end and look at maybe a 10-point victory for Arkansas. Illinois State at number 18, Wisconsin. I think Wisconsin's going to have a pretty good year in the Big Ten. I look for them to bounce back after finishing 9-4 last year. Not a bad team, but not probably what Wisconsin fans would expect. And I do think that they'll get off to a pretty good start against Illinois State. It was 4-7 last year under longtime coach Brock Spack. And they averaged just 2 yards a game last year. 252 yards a game and 18 points. Not a good way to go. I think Wisconsin gets off to a good start. Illinois State out of its league here, moving up and playing an FBS team like Wisconsin. But probably a pretty good payday for Illinois State, my guess is. West Virginia will visit number 17 Pitt, another team with a lot of question marks in the ACC. How do they replace Kenny Pickett? And his number 1 wide receiver last year as well, don't forget. Jordan Addison, who transferred to USC. We'll find out whether Kendon Slovis, who transferred in from USC and was picked by Pat Narduzzi to be the starting quarterback, can really keep this team on that trajectory that they were on last year. They were the ACC champions, if you remember, really pretty much dismantling Wake Forest in the championship game. And I think it'll be very interesting to see what happens. West Virginia has been very mediocre under their coach, Neil Brown, the last 3 seasons, being just a game under 500, I think. They're going to start Georgia transfer JT Daniels at quarterback. So might give them a fighting chance. Daniels, if he's got enough firepower around him, I think can be a decent quarterback for West Virginia. But I think I'm going to tell you what. Where is this game being played? This game's at Pittsburgh, so I'm going to take Pittsburgh to win this by a field goal, but West Virginia plays very tough. Bethune-Cookman goes to number 16. Hurricanes of Miami. You see the hat behind me. I think the Hurricane are going to be off to a great start here. They should not have any trouble with Bethune-Cookman. They should score 50-plus points. Shouldn't give up more than 10, 12 points, maybe a couple touchdowns. I don't know. Something to look forward to for Bethune-Cookman. But I think this team is going to be on its way to a really good season. How they fare against Clemson most likely will determine their season, as they're going to get Clemson during the regular season. And potentially we'll see them again in an ACC championship rematch. Their quarterback, Tyler Van Dyke, who's going to be a Heisman candidate and a potential number one pick in the NFL draft next year. That's how well he acquitted himself last year after replacing the injured Derek King. He threw 25 touchdowns with just 8 interceptions. And I think it's possible that he steps forward even bigger this year. I think Marco Cristobal is going to rebuild the culture there pretty quickly, and I think you're going to see this team compete here in the ACC. Syracuse will be lucky to win 2 games. If that happens, Dave, then Dino Babers, who's one of my favorites, will be fired. After the season they had last year and the season, if they win 2 games this year, that's going to be tough. And we'll get to that a little bit later as well. Western Michigan will visit number 15, Michigan State. These teams have played 16 times in the past, and the Spartans have won the last 12, dating back to 1921. And they won 51-17 the last time they met in 2019. 23-point favorite is Michigan State in this game. They'll likely win fairly easily. Right around that number, I'd say, sounds pretty good. Rice will visit number 14 USC. I think USC might be a little overrated. We'll see. This is a team that is very polarizing. People either think they're going to contend for a playoff spot, which I don't. I think Utah will contend for a spot out of the Pac-12. I do not think USC will. I think they're a bit overrated. But they're a 32-point favorite here. Rice is not very good. This is a really good soft landing spot for Lincoln Riley, Caleb Williams, Addison, as we talked about. Good spot for them to get off to a really good start. Probably win this game easily. If Rice scores a touchdown, I'll be shocked. And USC's looking forward to Fresno State coming up in Utah in the first few weeks of this season. North Carolina State, number 13, will go to East Carolina. This game's going to be closer than people might think. The Wolfpack were 9-3 last year, really surprising success in the ACC, and I think they'll continue that this year. Quarterback Devin Leary is expected to do big things this season. Last season, he had his best year to date, throwing for 35 touchdowns and just 5 interceptions. He had a great 5 game stretch in the ACC where he threw for over 300 yards against all ACC opponents in that stretch. And he's got the defense is also returning their top player and tackler in Drake Thomas. I don't think they're going to really. This East Carolina squad is tricky. They're 7-5. They play in the AAC. I think they could be a tricky team for teams to play this year, with quarterback Holton Ayers and running back Keaton Mitchell returning from last year's team. You get a little bit of experience in a decent team like East Carolina. They can surprise you. East Carolina has lost the last 2 games in this series, but they did win their last home matchup back in 2016. I think they're going to keep this game close. I do think North Carolina State will eke out a very, very close victory, less than a touchdown in this game. As we move forward and closer to the top 10, we get Central Michigan at Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State just missed the playoff last year. They do return a lot of guys. Their defense was really good. Their offense was very inconsistent last year. And I think this year they need to improve it. They need to get better play from Spencer Sanders. He threw for around 2,800 yards last year, 20 touchdowns, but 12 interceptions, and some big ones too. And I think this team – now, he did win the MVP in the Fiesta Bowl last year to give him maybe a little bit of momentum, a little confidence heading into this season. Central Michigan did go 9-4 last year under their third-year coach, Jim McElwain, the former Florida coach, and Colorado State coach. So we'll see. The Chippewas could be tough. That's their best finish in probably 13 or 15 years. And they're going to keep this game close for a while. I do think Oklahoma State will pull away at the end of this game, win by a couple of touchdowns. But I think Central Michigan will keep this game close early. Oregon, number 11, goes to number 3, Georgia. This is a key game for both of these teams. Big intra-conference game, and we got a couple of them coming up here. And tone setters for both these teams. Georgia losing a lot of players off that national championship team last year. We're going to see how well Kirby Smart can rebuild. That's the key, right? If Kirby Smart wants to get up there at the same level of Dabo Swinney and Nick Saban and some of these other guys, and he's close. Don't get me wrong, one of the great coaches in the country. But if he wants to be up there, he's got to show he can reload after having a couple of great seasons, actually. But not having lost the volume and level of players that he lost to the NFL this year. A record number of players drafted out of Georgia last year during the NFL draft. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens there. I'm going to take Georgia to win this game. Probably, I think they'll win this by 2 touchdowns. I think Oregon's got some work to do They've lost their coach. They've got a new head coach to deal with, and Dan Lanning, and he's actually a former Bulldogs defensive coordinator. So it'll be interesting to see how the former coach, assistant coach at Georgia, can fare visiting Athens, Georgia, as an opposing head coach. So that'll be interesting as well. I think Georgia will win this game fairly handily by a couple of touchdowns by the time it's over. Let's see. What else did I have here? We're into the top 10. Albany. Oh, gosh. The Great Danes of Albany, right here locally. Their campus is about 10 minutes away from where I'm broadcasting tonight. They're going to travel to number 10 Baylor. It's pretty aggressive scheduling by their coach to go play at Baylor, but I'm sure it's a pretty good payday. Dave Aranda had done a great job turning this Baylor team around in his second season, getting them to the Big 12 championship game. Did lose the starting quarterback, as we talked about, Bohannon, who's gone to South Florida, but he's been replaced and should be replaced pretty handily by Blake Chapin, who did win the Big 12 title game last year for Baylor while Bohannon was hurt. So I think this could be a breakout season for Chapin. And if that offense catches up to the defense at Baylor, this is a playoff contender if that were to happen. I still like Oklahoma State to be able to put things away in that Big 12 eventually. UTEP is at number 9, Oklahoma. We talked about this a little bit earlier. Sorry, I missed your comment here. We know that Augustin is a big Oregon fan. And he hopes the Ducks will go to Athens and beat Georgia. I think you're going to have a tough time of it this week. Dan Lanning, knowing Georgia, maybe knowing some of Kirby Smart's tendencies, but I just don't think it's going to happen. I think Georgia will win this game handily, as I said earlier. UTEP struggled last week. I thought UTEP might be a good sleeper pick from the group of 5, but they got off to a horrendous start last week, as we said, against North Texas. And the Brett Venable era begins in Oklahoma with a game against UTEP at home. The longtime Clemson defensive coordinator brought a ton of talent with him via the transfer portal, including former UCF quarterback Dylan Gabriel, who'll be the starter. And he was a starter for 3 seasons at UCF. 8,000 yards he threw for, 70 touchdowns and only 14 interceptions. So we'll see how well he can do working with former Ole Miss offensive coordinator Jeff Lebby. So this could be a big year for the Oklahoma offense, and we'll see if the defensive-minded Venables can help that Oklahoma defense keep pace with that fast-paced offense that they're likely to have. I think this is going to be a blowout. A week ago, I would have said UTEP might stay in the game for the half or so. I don't think that's going to happen. I see an easy 40-point win for Oklahoma in this game. Colorado State visits number 8, Michigan. Michigan is going to – we're going to talk about this with Mark Mancini. The decision of Jim Harbaugh to kind of rotate his quarterbacks. Cade McNamara, last year's starter, started every game for the Big Ten champions and playoff-bound Michigan Wolverines. He's going to get some challenge from J.J. McCarthy, who's going to start week 2 against Hawaii. As Harbaugh says, he's kind of taking an NFL approach, and this is like preseason for him. He's going to judge who his starting quarterback is going to be based off of this game against Colorado State for Cade McNamara. And J.J. McCarthy will get his chance next week against Hawaii. It looks to me like Harbaugh wants to do anything and everything he can to replace Cade McNamara. So even if he has a big day, it might not be enough for him to win this job, as Michigan likely they'll win easily against Colorado State this week. So, I would bet Michigan. But next week against Hawaii, they'll probably run wild. I mean, they just lost to Vanderbilt at home by 50. The game I'm really excited about, the team I think will crash the party from the Pac-12 at playoff time, is Utah. They're number 7 right now. They'll be at Florida. They're favored by 2.5 in this game. Very interesting line making in this game. For Utah to be on the road against a team as historically good as Florida, they've struggled last year. They struggled with their recruiting. They struggled with the transfer portal. Utah was as hot as anybody in the country last year at the end of the season. They did lose 4 games, but they returned 8 starters on offense, including Heisman Trophy hopeful quarterback Cameron Rising. So I love this team, and their leading rusher, by the way, Tavion Thomas. So I like Utah to go to Florida, win this game. Probably got to run a table. Probably going to have to be undefeated in that Pac-12 to get to the national championship game. Sam Houston State goes to Texas A&M. What are you going to say about this game? This game should be a shutout for Texas A&M. It's time for Kirby. I'm sorry, not Kirby. Jimbo Fisher to put up or shut up. He's done a lot of great recruiting. He does a lot of great talking. He needs to really start winning games, and he'll start with Sam Houston State. But when he gets a conference play, it's time for him to really get it together because he has not really produced what should be expected from a guy making the money he's making. And the recruiting classes that he continues to bring in. What do we got here? Clemson, we already talked about. Clemson at Georgia Tech, I did not talk about. Clemson going to Georgia Tech. Look, at Jeff Collins is in a lot of trouble at Georgia Tech. Probably going to get fired after this year unless they have some kind of miracle turnaround. This should be an easy start to the season for number 4 Clemson. Huge early season game for DJ Ugla. I cannot say his name. For quarterback DJ, you know who I'm talking about. Very bad year last year, 9 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. If he struggles, Cade Klubnik will likely be waiting in the wings. I don't think he'll struggle in this game, but DJ needs to play very well and play very consistently well, or he could easily lose his job to true freshman Cade Klubnik. It's happened before. Remember Trevor Lawrence taking over for Bryant back when Clemson was a national championship contender. We were surprised when it happened, at least I was, but we saw how well that worked out for Clemson. And in the game of the day, Notre Dame, number 5, goes to number 2, Ohio State. This is going to be very interesting. Ohio State, they missed out on the playoff last year, 11-2. The defense wasn't very good. C.J. Stroud is coming back. He's a Heisman Trophy candidate, if not the favorite. And this is going to be a tough spot for Marcus Freeman to start his career at Notre Dame as a head coach. They do return 8 starters on defense. That's the unit that Freeman oversaw before he became the head coach. They're going to be a playoff contender, but if they don't win this game, it's going to be a very tough climb. And they're going to start Tyler Buckner, who's going to be playing in a very hostile environment. He played a little bit last year, but he did win the job outright this spring and this summer. And it's going to be very interesting to see how Notre Dame can do going to a very hostile environment, as I said. Ohio State with a lot to prove defensively, and C.J. Stroud wants to get off to a great start on offense, obviously, and set some tone here for Ohio State. I think Ohio State's going to win this game. It's going to be a matter of how – and again, Notre Dame returns 8 guys on defense. Freeman is going to be keyed up on defense. It's going to be interesting. I do think Ohio State will win this game fairly handily by the end. Whether they'll cover a 17-point spread, not sure. But I think the game's going to be – I've seen a lot of predictions of 28-17-ish. I think it'll be more points scored than that. I think Notre Dame or Ohio State might get 40 on their own. I just have a feeling it's going to be that kind of game, and Notre Dame's going to have to keep that offense firing on all cylinders to stay with Ohio State on Saturday. That's a 7:30 game, by the way. And Utah State, who we talked about earlier, struggling at home with UConn, gets number 1 Alabama. Alabama's going to be favored huge in this game. This should be no problem for Alabama. Obviously, they don't really. Alabama's not taking a whole lot of chances out of conference, and this is another example of that. Utah State did go 11-3 last year. Does return 12 starters. but they're coming into the Lions' Den here. Will Anderson, is going to want to. He's going to want to show that he is a defensive player with Heisman Trophy appetite. He's mentioned in the Heisman Trophy race all the time, and I think it's possible that he will, be one of the guys invited to New York at the end of the day. Some of the best unranked games, and we'll go through some other ones later. Penn State at Purdue. This is a very interesting game. Purdue beat two teams ranked number 5 at the time last year in the Big Ten, Iowa and who was the other one? I can't remember who the other team they beat when they were ranked 5th, but they had a tremendous year last year, 9-4. That's a good season at Purdue. Jeff Brom's done a very good job building up this program since he's been there. Penn State, they did return 7 starters on offense, including their quarterback, Sean Clifford. But I've never been a big fan of James Franklin. And James Franklin seems to come up small, and his teams seem to come up small in big games. And I think Purdue's going to be sky high for this game. Thursday night, 8 o'clock. This is one of the games I'm very interested in watching this week. I think Purdue beats Penn State to get themselves off to a really good start, and Penn State to a struggling start. North Carolina at Appalachian State. This game got banished to like ESPNU or ESPN 6 or something. I think this is going to be a good game. UNC struggled last week, I thought, against Florida A&M. They did score 50-some points, I know, but they gave up some points in yards that they should not have given up to a team as weak as Florida A&M. And I think North Carolina State's going to go here and get beat by Appalachian State this week. They're probably going to be a favorite in this game, but that defense is not healed yet. And I see this game being a shootout in the 60s. Maybe it reaches 70, but I think this game's going to be an Appalachian State victory over the Tar Heels. Army, we always root for the service academies when we can. One of the best coaches in the country, in my mind, Jeff Moncton. I say it here all the time, coming off some great seasons with them so far. They're visiting Coastal Carolina, who's been on a good roll of their own, and their potential Heisman candidate, Grayson McCall, their quarterback, who was returning for his senior year. He was number 2 rated passer in the country last year as far as completion percentage goes. Army play, and these are two teams with totally different styles. You're going to see 2 offenses that are going to be so in such contrast that it's going to be very interesting, and 2 good defenses, 2 well-coached teams. The Chanticleers coach Jeremy Chadwell's done a very good job there, and I talk about Jeff Moncton, so you're probably tired of hearing me talk about it. But I think Coastal will squeak out a slim victory over Army here. If Army should pull the upset here, Army's going to be in good shape for another good season. Another interesting game for me is Florida State, 2 unranked teams. Florida State traveling to LSU in Coach Brian Kelly's first game at LSU after bolting Notre Dame for the, I'm not going to say greener pastures, but we can say the bayous of LSU. I still don't think this was a great move for Coach Kelly, but we're going to find out. I think it's going to take him some time to build this team up. I don't think LSU, there are some people predicting decent things for LSU this year. I am not one of them. I think they will struggle big time. We don't even know who their quarterback is necessarily going to be just yet. Florida State gets off to a good start last week, against Duquesne. Again, they need to win that big game, and they did. Mike Norvell on the hot seat. I just think this is going to be a spot for LSU to come up a bit small. They should be fired up to play for their new head coach. But Brian Kelly doesn't have a great record against Florida State himself. He's only 3-2 while he was at Notre Dame against Florida State. I think Florida State is going to get in here and keep this game close and win in the end by a field goal. So Florida State ruins Brian Kelly's head coaching debut. And we'll see how that goes. But just again, I just it might be my heart speaking because I like Coach Kelly at Notre Dame. I think he made a huge mistake in making a move here. Upset alert: South Dakota State goes to Iowa. South Dakota State finished 11-4 last year. They had wins over Colorado State. They beat reigning FCS champion South Dakota State, and I think they did. Their season did lose in the FCS semifinals against Montana State, but this team is well coached. I think it's got a really good offense, and a really good defense, and I think they keep this close. Iowa doesn't score a lot of points. Iowa's going to win this one by a field goal and I think in the fourth quarter, South Dakota State may have the ball with a chance to win this game. Richmond goes to Virginia. I think Richmond could have an upset possibility here. Richmond gets a new head coach in Tony Elliott. Struggled last year, the last couple of years in the ACC, and I think it's possible that Richmond could pull an upset here as well. I think Virginia will win this game, but I think you better watch Richmond pulling, what could be a shocker here at Virginia. And a game that has got to be a blowout or it's big trouble. I think Scott Frost is done. North Dakota is going to travel to Nebraska. Nebraska losing it in Dublin to Northwestern, as I talked about at the top of the show. Nebraska's got to win this game big. Casey Thompson had a very, very mixed bag in his debut last week. At times, he looked really, really poised. He did throw for 355 yards and a touchdown, but he threw a couple big interceptions and didn't seem to have great awareness on the field. So maybe it's just the first game jitters for Casey Thompson after transferring from Texas. We'll see. I think Nebraska does win this game handily, though. What else we got? You guys are quiet tonight. I'm having to talk myself through this. So let's look at some of the other games around, shall we? UC Davis will go to Cal. Here's our boy Mark Mancini. Actually, we'll as we've just kind of finished going through these top 25 games, let's bring in one Mark Mancini from Mancini Media. Good evening, Mr. Mancini. How are you?
Wow, there's not enough hours in the day, man. You get off of one thing, you get on to another, but I promise I deliver. So you got to come in here and talk. And man, what a geared up weekend of college football, brother.
I was just kind of going through the top 25 games and making some calls of my own before we finish up tonight. You and I will make our picks of locks and don't be surprised ifs, which I had a pretty good week last week. You might have struggled a little bit, but we both blew that Hawaii Vanderbilt
game.
We won't revisit that.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a couple of topics I want to chat about, though, before we talk about some of the games. I talked a little bit a second ago about Michigan and Jim Harbaugh and him kind of having an NFL competition. He's using these first couple games like NFL training camp and exhibition games. He's starting Cade McNamara this week, and he's going to start gosh, I forgot the kid's name already. Jesus.
I know who you mean. I got it on the tip of my tongue because I was part of a Detroit show.
I was just talking about him like 2 minutes ago. Can I forget? I think his name is McCarthy. Come on, Keith. Get it together, would you? But quite a day. I started out this morning doing the started up show, spilled my coffee all over the soundboard, all over everything. So that really kind of got us off to a bad
start. Did it short your board?
No, I didn't. I just flipped it over quickly before anything can get into it. But I did ruin a keyboard that I didn't move in time. But anyway, where the hell is that game?
Yeah, coffee and keyboards don't go along too good.
No, they do not. This is about the third one I've done the same thing with. So you'd think I'd learned my lesson, as my wife would say to me. But I want to say J.J. McCarthy. Does that sound right?
That does sound a little right.
Here it is. Yeah, J.J. McCarthy. Good grief. I had it right the whole time. I spent all the time looking for it. So it seems obvious to me, Cade McNamara started every game in Michigan's Big Ten run last year, their run to the college football playoff. But it seems to me that Harbaugh is dead set on replacing Cade McNamara. That's all I can read from this. that this is not his job is kind of amazing to me, and he's looking to play McCarthy. And Cade McNamara could have a big game this week against Colorado State and still lose his job when McCarthy plays against Hawaii next week. What are your thoughts on this whole process he's going through here?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. At least the Wolverines have 2 quarterbacks they can count on. That's more than the Detroit Lions can count on until they get Mason Rudolph.
Right. Well, that's
but I'm a big Harbaugh guy. I've had a chance to interview him and talk to him. I've always liked him. The jury's out, kind of like on Tom Brady and the New England Patriots and stuff like that. And he's always had to face adversity, and he's handled it real well. I mean, look at they talked about he couldn't beat Ohio State. They beat Ohio State, and then they pick apart something else. But tell me a guy that's been anywhere and not turned around a program, whether it was Stanford or the San Francisco 49ers. And now look at what he's done with Michigan. And I think you got to hold him in the high regard up there with Bo Schembechler.
Wow, that might be saying a little bit. I mean, I like Harbaugh what he's done, but
these kind of guys that toot their own horn. I'm a Jerry Glanville type of guy, man. Bum Phillips. I like these guys.
Yeah.
And there's a majority of people across this country that hate guys like that. So I think I'm in the minority backing these guys up. And look at Nick Saban. You flip on the Sports Illustrated top 25. They got Alabama sitting at the top of this thing. So, they're the bar of college football, my friend.
Well, for sure. I mean, there's some big stories this year in college football. Obviously, can Georgia reload? Is Kirby Smart? And I said it earlier in this show. Kirby Smart's one of the great coaches in the country, but if he wants to stay up on that pedestal, or at least near that pedestal with Nick Saban and Dabo Swinney, he needs to show that he can reload after losing just a plethora of great players to the NFL last year, a record number drafted, if I remember correctly, and defend that national championship. He doesn't need to win the national championship, but he needs to compete. I think they take a step back this year. What are your thoughts on Georgia?
Well, I do too. And, they're going to get a test right out of the gate with Utah.
No, they're getting Oregon.
Oregon, I mean, yeah.
Oregon, yeah, Oregon going there.
I'm going through my guys left and right here, and you're right. That's going to be an interesting game here. Now, the thing with Oregon is they stumble usually out of the gate for opening games, if you look at them. And then they start to gear up here. So it's going to be an interesting one.
We could say the same thing about Oregon, by the way. They've had some clunkers there the last 3 years coming out of the gate. One at Ohio State a couple of years ago. Well,
I'll tell you one thing. There's a team that doesn't have a problem getting out of the gate. They just can't sustain it after 3 games, and that's the UCLA Bruins. They start out like a bat out of hell with non-conference foes, and everybody's ready to give them a mantle and a ticket into the Final Four. And then all of a sudden they read their headlines and they go downhill. But you know what? I think Chip Kelly's doing something there. So I think, he's been making progress little by little each and every week there. So, and they got a good running attack there in the UCLA.
I think that conference is Utah's to lose. You talked about Utah a second ago. They're going to start off with Florida, which is an interesting matchup as well, on the road. They're 2.5-point favorite, interestingly enough. Florida struggled last year. New head coach in Billy Napier from Louisiana Tech.
Where's Pitts when you need them?
Yeah, they could need them this week. That's for sure. I think Utah goes in there and starts what could be an undefeated campaign, because I think that's the only way a Pac-12 team gets in is if they go undefeated.
Well, don't sell USC short here. Now I know they get a cream puff the first week with Rice.
Very cream puff.
But Lincoln Riley this guy's built the same way like Nick Saban, man. I'm telling you, man. Watch out for this guy. USC is going to get back, and now they're in a different conference. They've made strides over the summer, hiring him and getting in the Big Ten.
Well, I agreed. I'd like to hire, but I think it's a little too soon. Even number 14, where they're starting off the season ranked in the AP, it might be a little high for USC. I think their playoff aspirations are not that good. Caleb Williams, you want to talk about, we talk about Caleb Williams like he's a great quarterback. Oklahoma didn't do that much with him last year. He played okay after replacing Shane Rattler. But if you want to talk about the best quarterback in that Pac-12, it's Cameron Rising out of Utah. He's experienced. He's a possible Heisman Trophy candidate. That's a very experienced team who was playing as good as anybody in the country at the end of last year. I know they had 4 losses, but this team was playing as well as anybody in the country. They won the Rose Bowl against Ohio State.
I think, they should have had another loss, and I don't know how Arizona State let them off. They had them down 14-0 in that game, let them off. They should have buried them. But Utah doesn't show me, when I look at teams this year and beyond, I don't really have Utah. Oregon could be somewhat of a thing, but I think you got to keep your eyes on USC and UCLA, and the Pac-12 is going to be excited to see these guys leave here, after a year and a half or so. So I think that's where you're gonna see it, and then you're gonna start to see maybe a boatload of teams and who's leaving the ACC here too.
Well, yeah, it's funny. I was talking about the commissioner, Jim Phillips, talking about what great trajectory the ACC was on. And I'm like, what, straight down? Because by 2025, they're liable to lose their best 6 teams to the SEC and the Big 12. The next time there's a realignment, which I would think is going to happen by 2025.
Yeah, I think everybody across the country is going to look at what I'm wearing right now, Michigan football.
Where's your UCLA shirt? That looks like UCLA colors, not Michigan colors.
No, it's Michigan.
I can see it. That's a pretty powder blue, kind of powder blue.
Supporting Harbaugh, walking around getting dirty looks in Los Angeles at 112 degrees out here for the next 5 days.
What other big stories you see? I mean, I got 2 I want to talk to you about. But what do you see as big stories right now as we get started with this week 1 now? Week 0 is behind us. We'll talk about.
I'll tell you one thing. I'll tell you one thing with Nebraska. This team wasn't built for this conference. They took this was a money grab here to get in this conference. They should have stayed right where they were. And Frost threw everybody under the bus. Come on, man. You got to take responsibility and accountability on your own.
That loss is all on him. That loss is all on him in my mind. He's up 28-17 with 11 minutes left, and he's going to onside kick. What are you kidding me? Nobody onside's kicking that space.
This team's not built for this conference. Come on, man.
So look, the question I had earlier, the question of the week for me is, it's not whether Scott Frost loses his job. To me, he lost his job last week. It's whether he finishes the season. I think he doesn't. His buyout, he's got a buyout that's $15 million right now. After October 1st, it falls to $7.5 million. And I think if this team doesn't win its next 3 games before October 1st, you may see him out of here before the season's even over.
Well, I'll tell you one thing: you can forgive in life, but you don't forget, and that's the problem here. And when he showed his colors and everything and threw everybody under the bus, yeah, it's a slippery slope for Nebraska football. And I don't think he's going to survive either.
I don't think he makes it to the end of. I don't think he makes it to the end of the season. I think he gets fired during the season. As soon as that buyout is cut in half, I think he's going to be out of there fast.
Well, the other boy there we got to run in feud is, and I don't know why he doesn't return this guy's emails or phone calls or whatever. You got to respect your elders, man. You got to respect Lou Holtz. Well, this guy could find himself out of a job in another year. He ain't turning LSU around. Let's not kid ourselves.
Look, it's very funny you brought that up because I've got that down as one of the things I wanted to talk about. I think Brian Kelly's debut in Baton Rouge is going to be a rough one because Florida State is not a great team. Mike Norvell's fighting for his life there, but I think they're going to go into Baton Rouge and win this game and beat Brian Kelly in his debut.
Yeah, Brian Kelly's going to wish he was back at Notre Dame. You know what? No, he could. LSU fans, and I wish John DeLong, he's one of our SEC elitist followers who's not with us tonight. But, these LSU fans, they think that they ought to be winning national championships every single year. Brian Kelly's going to find out, LSU isn't Alabama and it's not Georgia. He's going to have a hard time in that SEC. He could have stayed at Notre Dame. All he's got to do is make playoffs and maybe win one national championship, and he'd be a god there. Yeah, you be careful when they come into the SEC and they're wearing that white hat with the white horse and they're telling everybody there's a new sheriff in town. That's when you got to be leery. And I'm not a big fan of him. I liked Ed Orgeron. I really did at LSU.
Well,
But
every time they get a coach that wins a national championship, they can't wait to fire him. They did the same thing to Les Miles. Miles has had some really good teams at LSU. They couldn't wait to get rid of him as soon as he took a little downward spin. And the same thing happened to Ed Orgeron, although he might have been part of his own.
Well, and then the scandal there at LSU did him in too.
Yeah, he admitted it, that he kind of fell in love with the bright lights and some other things, I guess. But, he brought them an unexpected national championship in a dream season, and LSU fans probably shouldn't forget that.
Yeah, how many scandals have we heard? I'll tell you one thing. I'm looking for that Clemson-Georgia Tech game. That's going to be.
I think Clemson's going to win this easy. Jeff Collins he's another guy. He'll be lucky if he makes it through the season at Georgia Tech. That team has been atrocious for the past 3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah, the Yellow Jackets. Unbelievable. Been a long time since they've done anything.
What are your hold on, I wanted to Jesus, I'm so screwed up today. I have made so many mistakes this morning and tonight. I just can't get on my A game here.
Well, you know what? When we get to this age, we got to start taking Prevagen.
Oh my God! I said Prevagen ought to be sponsoring my show, for crying out loud. If all they do is watch me and say, "Let's give this guy all the free Prevagen we can give him," and let him talk about it. Good grief! All right, tell me what your. We're going to do our picks in a second, but give me 2 games outside of the really big ones we've already talked about. Right? What's a game that interests you? 2 games that interest you. I got a couple good ones. Not top 25 games. Teams outside of top 25 that you want to watch their games this week.
Well, I want to see the Oregon-Georgia.
Well, that's a ranked game. That's a big game.
Yeah, I want to see that one.
Something off the radar.
Because
I got a couple good ones for you.
God, Western Michigan.
That's a good one
Against Michigan State, I believe. Yeah,
that's a good one. That's a good rivalry.
I was on a show in Michigan, and they were asking me about Michigan, State and how good they were, and I said, well, it's not what you they started out like a bat out of hell, and then the wheels completely fell off with this team. And who's to blame here? Tucker's not a bad coach. But he's following a legend there. Yeah,
and I was surprised that there goes Mark just popped out. I think he was having some connection issues. Talking about Tucker, and I'll talk about it when Mark comes back too. I was surprised that he got the extension that he got after a very small window of success. Mel Tucker did a good job at Michigan State. I don't know if you could hear me, Mark. I was a little surprised that Tucker got the big extension as quickly as he did. And there goes Mark again. So, oh, God. Anyway, I'll give you the 2 games I'm interested in this week, guys. I'm very interested in can you hear me, Mark? Can you hear me, Mark?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So anyway, let's get back to Mel Tucker real quick. I was surprised he got the extension as quickly as he got that big extension after a very small window or sample size of success. Did a good job getting this team headed in the right direction. I wasn't really crazy that they fired D'Antoni, actually. I thought he was doing a great job at Michigan State.
I do.
But Mel Tucker gets the job, does okay, gets a big extension. I'll give you a game that I want to see this weekend. I think it's going to be very interesting. Penn State at Purdue. I like Purdue to beat this team. Jeff Brom's done a great job at Purdue. They went 9-4 last year. They beat 2 teams, Iowa and the other one slipping my mind, that were number 5 in the country at the time last year, both from the Big Ten.
Well,
and I like them at home. James Franklin doesn't do it for me. His teams don't come up big in a big spot, and I think Purdue's going to be sky high for this game. Thursday night, 8:00.
Well, I got to get you this guy for your show, Keith Dorney, former Lion, Penn State guy. Man, I'll tell you, when you look at Penn State, boy, how the mighty have fallen. I know they picked it up somewhat, but this used to be a prominent program, man. Year in and year out, you can count on them. With Paterno there, and I don't know what's happened at this school, ever since, he was let go. And statue came down and everything, then went back up. But
yeah, they were kind of on a downward trend even then.
Yeah. We talk about it in the NFL, and I know it's a college show, but we talk about guys leaving an organization, and then the organization takes a decade for it to come back. We saw that with Drew Brees with the San Diego Chargers. We saw that with Harbaugh with the 49ers. Man, it's been a long time since we've seen Penn State actually be Penn State.
Yeah, and
you're right.
And James Franklin names comes up for every job that opens up in the country, and I just for the life of me don't understand why. And he gets a big extension now from Penn State for what? He hasn't made a playoff. He hasn't made a Big Ten championship game. I mean,
Well, it's like the other guy. I'll tell you too. Here's a memo. This is not a prediction. This is a spoiler alert. Cristobal is not turning around Miami.
Oh, you and I will disagree there. It might be a heart bet, but the Hurricane are back.
See, I wasn't,
outside pick playoff.
Well, here's the thing with when I look at Oregon, they've had a long line of great coaches there. Now he had a system. You talk about a guy that could just, like a Brian Kelly that could have just stayed there. He's going in uncharted waters down there in Miami now. I know, that's where he's from and all this stuff, but he had a good thing going, especially with USC and UCLA leaving the conference. His battles would probably have come from Utah. Maybe you got Washington or somebody coming in the equation. But be careful for what you wish for. And this is another guy that I think you're going to see a big disappointment. I think these guys are going to be pretenders more so than contenders. It's going to be interesting to see where this is going. He's got
a Heisman Trophy candidate quarterback in Van Dyke, likely first-round draft pick in the NFL draft next year. He's going to have a big year. It's going to come down to Clemson, the regular season game, and probably a rematch in the ACC championship game, maybe for a spot in the playoff. Who knows?
Well, I've seen a lot of those Pac-12 guys flex their shoulders and lift the biceps up and tell everybody what they're going to do. And then they get in these championship games and they get rattled by Ohio State or they get blown by Alabama. Miami, I don't see them coming into the top four in this thing. I know prognosticators might have them.
I think they'll fall short of the playoff. I'll give you that.
Yeah, I don't see them doing that. This is a far cry. Another franchise where it's a far cry when Jimmy Johnson and everybody were down there turning this. You had Testaverde and the guys and Bernie Kosar.
Yeah. Well, it's going to bear watching. We're going to have a lot of fun this year. Let's get to we only got about a minute and a half left. Let's get to our dead solid lock and our don't be surprised if for this week. Give me your lock.
I'll tip the scales here. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if Oregon gives Georgia all they can ask for.
All right, that's your lock?
That's my lock. And don't be surprised if Western Michigan pulls one on Michigan State.
That's a big one right there.
Yeah,
I'll give you one.
We'll see the Tucker era start off, and hopefully he doesn't become Frost.
Well, I'm going to tell you, here's going to be my lock. Nebraska bounces back with a big win over North Dakota by about 3 touchdowns. There's my lock. Scott Frost is still gone. Doesn't matter what happens there. And my don't be just surprised if Penn State goes into Purdue and loses to the Boilermakers to start the season 0-1 again. And the Boilermakers could be a surprise in the Big Ten. That Western Division is going to be very interesting. So, guys, it's going to be a big week. We'll recap it all Sunday in the Stream of Consciousness. We'll recap it here next week. Mark will be on with me 10 a.m. Eastern time as we're moving the show up a half an hour with the football season starting. So we'll see you then, and we'll see you next week right here on the College Football Huddle right here on TGI Sports Talk on Northeast Streaming Sports. See you later, guys.